Welcome, my family. Before we jump in, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. I'd also love to know, where are you watching from and what time is it there? Please hype me on YouTube. Thanks. I never believed in ghosts, but I always believed in silence. It was the only thing that felt steady, the only thing I could control. The kind of silence you wake into on misty mornings when the whole town hasn't stirred yet, when the streets feel like empty lungs waiting for the first inhale. That silence wrapped around me in Fairbridge, my small riverside town in the south of New Zealand. But sometimes silence isn't comfort. Sometimes it presses against you like wet cloth, clinging, suffocating, as if it knows something you don't. I didn't understand that difference until I met Claire Morgan. Fairbridge wasn't the kind of place where strange things happened. We had willow trees that shed in slow spirals along cracked sidewalks, neighbors who waved whether you liked them or not, and a river that carried the same gray water past our peeling docks day after day. I had lived there my whole life, in an aging two-story with creaky bones and a stubborn chill in the walls. My father, Robert Marsh, a retired schoolteacher, lived downstairs, spending his mornings with the newspaper and his afternoons staring out at nothing in particular. My life had a rhythm I never questioned. Wake, breakfast, bike to university, pull a short shift at the second-hand bookstore, bike home, sleep, repeat. I was 20 then, restless but not searching, content in a way that now feels like blindness, because I thought that silence meant safety. And then Claire stepped into my life, and the silence began to mean something else entirely. The first time I saw her was in the bookstore, Spine and Paper, a dusty little shop that smelled of damp pages and weak lemon polish. She came in during the summer before my third year of university, wearing a vintage gray coat despite the mild air, black boots that seemed too heavy for her thin frame, and a scarf wound high up her throat. She didn't look at me, didn't smile. She only asked, in a voice so soft it almost dissolved into the musty air, "Do you have any books on lucid dreaming?" There was nothing special about the question, but something in the way she asked it made me want her to keep talking, even if it was about nothing at all. Over the next few weeks she returned, always evenings, always alone. We spoke first about dreams, then about music, then about how she didn't own a smartphone. Just a flip phone that looked 10 years out of date. I thought it was quaint at first, charming in an eccentric way. Later it would terrify me. By the third week I asked if she wanted to get coffee. She said yes without pause, as though she had been waiting for me to ask. Our first date was a walk by the river at sunset. Her silence made me nervous at first, but when she did speak, it was always heavy, as though her words carried weight no one else could see. "I used to sleepwalk," she said, watching the river move like black oil under the last slice of sun. "My parents would find me outside, just standing there, staring at nothing." I tried to laugh it off. "That's creepy." She didn't laugh. She didn't even smile. She turned her pale face toward me and said, "It was." That was Claire, a strange mix of fragility and depth, as though she'd stepped out of another decade and never caught up. Her beauty was sharp but understated, dark hair always loose, pale skin untouched by makeup. She looked like someone who could disappear if you blinked too long, but I kept looking anyway. We started seeing each other often, but always in places that felt removed from the world. Quiet parks, empty fields, my house. She never wanted to go to a cafe, never agreed to a pub, never let me visit her home. She said it was messy. I didn't push. Loneliness makes you accept oddities as romance. It felt like she wanted me all to herself, and for a while I liked that, until the strangeness began to feel heavier than affection. One night in late September, lying in the grass behind my house, she whispered, "Do you believe souls can be split?" I thought she meant metaphorically, so I said something about identity, about people not knowing who they really were. She turned her head, hair brushing my cheek. "No, I mean literally. Like, what if someone's soul broke in half and one part stayed behind?" I laughed nervously, but she didn't laugh with me. She just looked back up at the stars. A cold weight settled in my chest, but I told myself it was only talk. People said strange things in the dark. I was wrong. The night it happened, it was early October. She'd stayed at my place late, until just after 11:30 p.m. She said she wanted to walk back alone. I offered to come halfway, but she smiled, a rare smile, and shook her head. No one's out this late. It's peaceful. I watched her walk down the dim street, coat pulled tight, until she vanished under the flickering streetlight. I was still at my window when I heard it. A knock. Not at the front door, but against my bedroom window that faced the backyard. I froze, the air trapped in my chest. When I pulled the curtain, no one was there, but a chill climbed my spine as though something had brushed right past me. I was still standing there, heart hammering, when my phone buzzed. It was a text. From Claire. I need you to come to the river now, please. No punctuation, just those words. I didn't change out of my pajamas. I ran. The path to the river cut through a patch of woods behind the old community hall, and I'd walked it countless times. But that night the air was thick, muffled, every sound swallowed before it reached me. When the clearing opened, the moon hung low and swollen, casting the water in a sickly silver shimmer. And then I saw her. Claire. Standing by a crooked tree at the water's edge, head bowed, her hair hiding her face. "Claire?" I called, my voice too thin. She didn't respond. I stepped closer, the grass damp under my bare feet. Slowly she raised her head. My stomach lurched. Her skin was pale with a bluish cast, her eyes glassy and wrong, blood seeping from the corner of her mouth. I stumbled back. "Claire? What the hell? Are you okay?" She didn't move, didn't open her lips, but her voice slid into my head like cold smoke. "Don't uncover me." The world tilted, and then nothing. When I woke, I was in my bed. My clothes were damp, mud clinging to my pajama cuffs. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the blanket. My father was in the kitchen, reading the paper like any other morning. I checked my phone. No message. I tried calling Claire. The line was dead. At the bookstore, no sign of her. On campus, no one had seen her. It was like she had vanished, or worse, like she had never existed at all. By afternoon, the day felt warped, hours melting into each other. That night, she came back in a dream, standing at the river whispering, "You saw too much." I filed a missing person report. Detective Michael Lane listened patiently, but his questions carved holes in my story. "No phone number? No address? No photos? You said she didn't even use social media?" "She's real," I said, my voice thin but certain. "We've been together for 2 months." He nodded slowly, but I saw doubt in his eyes. To him, I sounded like a lonely girl clinging to an imaginary friend. So I dug myself. In town archives, yellowing newspapers, microfilm. Anything about the river, the tree, that stretch of land. And I found it. An article from 1964. Local woman drowns after alleged possession. Claims of witchcraft denied. Her name was Clara Morgan. The photo was grainy, but it was her. Same sharp jaw, same eyes, same face. The article said townspeople had found her by the river, nailed to a tree, claiming she lured young men at night, whispering to them. Some returned, changed, some never returned at all. She had died at 22. Claire was 22. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. When exhaustion finally dragged me under, I woke to another sound. Knocking. Not the window this time. The front door. My throat tightened as I grabbed a flashlight and opened it. No one. Only a single wet footprint on the porch. I turned back inside, and she was there. Claire. Standing barefoot in the hallway, soaked, her skin pale as milk, eyes hollow. I froze. Couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. She stepped closer. Tears tracked her face, her voice trembled. I tried to stop them. I tried to leave. My own words scraped out, raw and shaking. "Claire, what are you?" She looked at me and her voice broke. "I'm what they made me." And then, she was gone. Not ran, not faded. Gone, like she'd never been. It has been 7 years. I left Fairbridge. Therapy, marriage, Auckland. I built a life with walls thick enough to keep silence out. But late at night, it still comes. The knock, just once. Then stillness. And sometimes, when I pass a river, I feel someone walking just behind me. I never turn, because I know it's her. And if I ever look back, she'll come home with me. I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped into that loft. Not because of the lighting, not because of the view that spilled out across Portland's skyline like some glossy magazine ad, but because of the silence. It was the kind of silence that doesn't just wait, it presses in, as if it knows you have nowhere else to go. The walls were bare, concrete and glass, sleek in that modern way people like to call minimalist. To me, it felt more like a place stripped of memory, stripped of warmth. A place that wanted you to forget yourself. Ethan thought it was beautiful. I watched him wheel his small black suitcase across the polished floor, his face brighter than it had been in weeks, and I tried to smile. He was always trying so hard, always thinking one more trip, one more dinner, one more romantic gesture would fix what we had. But what did we have anymore? Sometimes I wasn't sure. And sometimes, though I could never admit this to him, I wasn't even sure who I was in those moments with him. He turned to me with that hopeful grin. "Sarah, what do you think? Perfect, right?" I nodded. "Yeah, it's perfect." The word left my mouth like smoke, fading before it even reached him. The city lights bled through the tall windows, casting long shadows that trembled when a car passed below. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, though the place wasn't cold. It was late fall, crisp and damp outside, but in here it felt sealed off, airless. We unpacked in near silence. He hummed under his breath while stacking his shirts in the closet. I sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through my phone, pretending I wasn't irritated by how carefully he was placing each folded piece of clothing. My thumb slid across the screen, but my eyes weren't registering anything. I kept glancing at the door to the hallway. The black steel frame looked like it belonged in a hospital or an institution rather than a home. That was the first ripple of unease, though at the time I told myself it was nothing more than fatigue from the drive. Still, I felt it. The sense that this wasn't a weekend getaway. It was something else. Something that would change the ground under my feet. We ordered Thai food, shared a bottle of cheap red wine. Ethan told a story about a new client at his design firm, how demanding they were, how the whole project felt impossible. He laughed, looking for me to laugh with him. I forced it, but my head was somewhere else. Every sound seemed too loud. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of my phone charger, the faint whoosh of the elevator down the hall. By the time we went to bed, I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to Ethan's slow breathing beside me. The city outside was alive. Sirens in the distance, a dog barking somewhere, the faint hum of tires on wet pavement. But inside, it was too still. That silence pressed down again, heavier now. I felt watched, though I knew we were alone. When I finally drifted off, it wasn't into rest, but into a dream that felt like being pulled under ice. I woke with a jolt at 3:14 a.m., gasping. The sheets beside me were cold. Ethan wasn't there. I pushed myself up, heart pounding, and listened. From the kitchen, I heard the faint clink of glass. Relief flickered. He must have gone to get water. But when I walked out, bare feet against the too smooth floor, I froze. He was standing at the window, staring out into the night. His reflection in the glass was wrong, longer, stretched, a silhouette with sharper shoulders. For a heartbeat, it looked like someone else entirely. "Ethan?" I whispered. He turned too quickly, eyes wide as if I'd caught him. But then he smiled, soft and easy. "Hey, couldn't sleep. You okay? I wanted to tell him what I saw, but the words lodged in my throat. Instead, I nodded. He kissed my forehead, told me to go back to bed. I did, but I didn't sleep. The next morning, things began to crack. It started small. My phone charger was missing. I knew I'd plugged it in beside the bed, but the cord was gone. Ethan swore he hadn't touched it. Then, over breakfast, I caught him staring at me. Not in a sweet, affectionate way, but as if studying me, as if waiting for me to slip. When I asked what he was doing, he laughed. Nothing. Just looking at you. Is that a crime? The words were light, but his tone was off. I brushed it aside. Maybe we were both on edge. Maybe it was the city, the loft, the pressure of pretending everything was fine. But by that afternoon, the air between us had thickened. He made small comments, the kind that cut beneath the skin. You text your friends a lot, more than you talk to me. Or, that waiter smiled at you a little too long, don't you think? They were whispers of suspicion, meant to sound like jokes, but each one landed like a pinprick. By evening, I felt unsteady in my own body. My prescription for anxiety sat in my purse, little white pills that sometimes took the edge off. But when I reached for them, the bottle was gone. I tore through my bag, through my suitcase, even checked under the bed. Nothing. Ethan, did you move my medication? My voice trembled despite how I tried to steady it. He looked up from the couch. Calm. Too calm. What are you talking about? Maybe you left it at home? No, I packed it. His expression softened into something almost pitying. Are you sure you didn't take them already? You've been really stressed. That word, stressed, felt like a slap. It wasn't stress. It was something else, something gnawing at the edges of reality. And he knew it. I saw it in his eyes. That night, I found the knife. I rolled over in bed, reaching beneath the pillow for comfort, for cool cotton. Instead, my hand met metal. I jerked back, heart thundering. Pulling the pillow aside, I saw it. A kitchen knife, the blade gleaming faintly in the dim light. Ethan, my voice broke. He sat up groggily, blinking. What? What is it? I held up the knife. What the hell is this doing here? For a moment, his face was unreadable. Then he rubbed his eyes, sighed, and shook his head. Sarah, you're imagining things. You must have brought it here yourself. Why would I do that? I don't know. You've been off. Maybe you're not sleeping well. Gaslight. That was the word that slammed into me. He was gaslighting me, making me question myself, but I wasn't imagining it. The knife was real, cold, heavy in my hand. I shoved it away and curled beneath the sheets, trembling. Sleep came in fragments, broken by whispers in the dark. Sometimes they sounded like Ethan, sometimes they didn't. The next day, I barely spoke. He tried to lighten the mood, cooking breakfast, putting on music. But every note sounded warped, every smell too sharp. The eggs tasted metallic, the orange juice sour. My skin prickled with static whenever he came near. That evening, the climax came. I was in the bathroom, splashing water on my face when I heard movement in the living room. A sharp thud, then silence. I opened the door and froze. Ethan was there, standing in the middle of the room, a knife in one hand. His other hand was pressed to his forearm, smearing something dark. When he saw me, he dropped the knife and screamed, "You hit me! You tried to hurt me!" The sound ripped through the loft, high-pitched and desperate. He stumbled back, holding up his arm. Bruises bloomed there, but I knew they hadn't come from me. The neighbors pounded on the walls. Voices shouted through the thin plaster. My head spun. "No, I didn't." I tried to explain, but he was already shouting for help, already painting me as the monster. Panic swallowed me whole. I ran, out the door, down the hall, slamming my hand against the elevator button. It was too slow, too exposed. So I bolted for the stairs, bare feet slapping concrete, heart hammering in my chest. 3 flights down, out onto the street, the night air slicing my lungs. I didn't stop. Not until the loft was far behind me, its windows glowing like eyes. The aftermath was worse than the escape. Police reports, accusations, hours in a freezing cell while Ethan told his story, his version of it. He showed them his bruises, spoke with that calm, rational voice while I shook and stammered, sounding every bit the unstable woman he wanted them to believe I was. The charges didn't stick. Lack of evidence, my friends vouching for me. But innocence doesn't erase what happened. Innocence doesn't scrub the stain of being looked at like you're dangerous, broken, less than human. Now I live with it. With him. Not physically. He's gone, out there somewhere. But in my head. I see him in reflections, in crowds, in the faces of strangers. I hear his voice in the silence, whispering the same words. I own you now. And sometimes late at night, when the city sleeps and the air presses heavy on my chest, I wonder if he was only a man at all, or if something darker wore his skin, walked beside me, loved me just enough to make me doubt myself before taking everything away. I don't know which truth is worse, but I know this. The monsters you should fear aren't the ones that lurk in shadows. They're the ones who convince you to lie beside them, whisper sweet things into your ear, and smile as they hollow you out from the inside. And if I'm honest, if I peel back the last layer of denial, I can't help but feel that the loft at 1085 NW Hoyt Street is still waiting for someone else to step inside, to breathe in that sterile air, and to realize too late that some places don't just hold you, they claim you, forever. I never trusted silence, not really. To me, silence was never a gift, never peaceful. It felt like something alive, like a sheet pulled too tight across a bed, with something shifting just underneath. That was the first thing I noticed about the Airbnb. The silence didn't rest. It waited. The cottage at 11425 Suncrest Avenue in Los Gatos was supposed to be our sanctuary, our last chance. Liam said it would help us reconnect, that if we stripped away all the noise of our daily lives, his writing deadlines, my classes, the constant suspicion between us, we might remember what we were before the rot set in. But I think, deep down, even before I touched the warm brass doorknob, I knew something was wrong. The cottage was too perfect. Cream siding, red trim, roses curling over the porch rails. It was small but too carefully staged, like it was dressed up to look lived in. Inside, the rugs were patterned, the curtains floral, the bookshelves lined with titles that smelled of dust and mildew. Everything hummed faintly of someone else's life, but the longer I stood there, the more it felt like it was humming to me. I should tell you why we came here. Liam. He was older, a writer in his late 20s with a steady voice and dark hair that fell in his eyes when he leaned over his notebooks. He used to be my anchor, the first person who seemed to see me without flinching. I met him when I was still raw and half-finished, knee-deep in graduate school critiques that tore apart every canvas I put in front of them. He listened to me. He soothed me. He told me my intensity was beautiful. But anchors can become chains. Somewhere along the way, he started keeping parts of himself hidden, pulling back when I leaned closer. He said I smothered him, accused me of spinning stories about his past that weren't true. But I only wanted truth. I wanted all of him. And when he wouldn't give it, my love twisted into something sharp, something desperate. He thought this trip would heal us. I thought it would finally make him see. The first day was unremarkable. We unpacked. He scribbled in his notebooks on the porch while I set up my easel by the window. I'd insisted on bringing it, along with a stack of blank canvases and a case of oils. He sighed when he saw me dragging them in, but didn't argue. He never argued, not directly. His silences were worse. I began painting him immediately. At first I told myself it was only natural. He was my subject, my muse. But even the first portrait was wrong. His face was familiar but hollowed out, his eyes too deep, too dark, like something else peered through them. He laughed when he saw it. "You make me look like a ghost," he said, and pressed a quick kiss to my hair. But I caught the way his jaw tightened before he turned the canvas to face the wall. The second day was stranger. I started a sketch at noon, just rough lines in charcoal. When I blinked, the window was black, crickets screaming outside, my hand cramping like it had been clutched around the brush for hours. The canvas was complete. His face again, only blurred at the edges, his mouth open like he was trying to scream but couldn't. "Nat," he said that night as we lay in bed, his voice low, careful. "Maybe you should take a break from painting for a bit." "I can't," I said too quickly. The truth was I didn't even remember finishing half of them, but the compulsion was stronger than hunger, stronger than sleep. That night I woke to the smell of turpentine even though I'd sealed the bottles. I padded barefoot into the main room. The air was heavy, pressing on my chest. One of my canvases, the one I had stacked against the wall, was back on the easel, new strokes glistening wet. I didn't remember painting them. Liam swore later he hadn't touched it, hadn't even looked at it. But the marks were real. That was when I began losing time. I would sit down mid-morning, charcoal in hand, and when I next looked up, the sun was gone, my body aching like I'd been bent over for years. My eyes blurred, my mouth tasted of metal. I'd stumble to the bathroom and splash water on my face, only to find black smudges on my cheeks, streaks of paint across my arms. My reflection looked thinner each night, my eyes wider, hungrier. The paintings grew darker. His face, but not his face. Someone else's expression bleeding through. Sometimes I thought I saw it ripple when I stared too long, like wet paint that never dried. The room smelled of decay and lavender, a sickly sweet mix that made my throat ache. On the third night, I woke to the sound of canvas groaning, as though stretched too tight. Liam was gone from the bed. The light under the door flickered, pulsed. He was standing at my easel, staring at the latest canvas. It was him, but bound. Ropes cut into his arms, tape sealed his mouth, his eyes bulged with terror. The paint was still wet. My heart stuttered. I didn't remember making it. His voice cracked. "What the hell is this?" The words rose in me like they had always been waiting. "It's honest. Humans are only honest when they're dying." He staggered back, yanked the other canvases into the light. One by one he exposed them. Men screaming, men tied, men mutilated. Not famous, but familiar. Shadows of faces I'd tried to forget. The man who grabbed my arm outside a gallery once. The professor who told me my work was hysterical. An old boyfriend who'd laughed when I cried. Liam's face drained of color. "Natalie, who the fuck are they?" I whispered, trembling but certain. "They're not famous, but they're my best work." The air changed then. The lamps dimmed though the bulbs burned. The shadows stretched too long, too thick, like a second figure loomed just behind him. The house itself seemed to breathe. He didn't see it. "I've been planning your painting for days," I said. Something snapped. He lunged for the door. My hand was already around the hammer. I don't know when I picked it up. The weight was perfect, inevitable. The crash of it into the doorframe was deafening. Splinters rained. Liam stumbled through, tripping over the plastic sheet I had laid out earlier. His bare feet slapped the cold earth outside, raw, desperate. His scream was animal. He vanished into the night, swallowed by the hills. I stood in the doorway, hammer in hand, chest heaving. The house pulsed, alive. Applause thundered in my ears, though no one clapped. The police arrived the next day. Their radios buzzed with static, their voices warped, questions melting into nonsense. The canvases betrayed me. They compared the faces to photographs of two missing hikers, perfect matches, but everything was dreamlike. My words drifted, not mine, but spoken through me. They called me manipulative, dangerous. Maybe I was. Maybe not. The trial was short. Life without parole. Now the silence has followed me into my cell. At night, when the lights die, the smell of turpentine seeps through the concrete. I wake to find black smudges on my fingers, sketches clawed into the wall though they give me no tools. My nails are bloodied, raw, yet the charcoal is there. Men screaming, men bound, men dying. Sometimes Liam's face is among them, his eyes hollow, too deep, like something else stares through them. The guards say I'm scratching at stone, losing my mind. Maybe they're right. But when I press my fingers to the wall, the strokes are wet. And sometimes, just at the edge of my sight, I see him, Liam, or what's left of him. His shadow too long, stretching toward me, waiting. This isn't over. He was always meant to be my masterpiece, and I haven't finished painting him yet. I always believed the worst someone could do in a relationship was lie or cheat. That's what I thought until I met him. It didn't begin as something dark. It began with warmth, with late-night conversations, and with that fleeting relief you feel when you've been drowning in loneliness and someone finally notices you. I had just moved to Portland after dropping out of college in Eugene. 19, directionless, and broke. I was sleeping on my cousin Maya's couch, my days spent in restless limbo. Maya dragged me out one night, promising I needed to see people. That was when she introduced me to him. Elias, he's different, the good kind of different. And he was. When he smiled, it wasn't dazzling or showy, but quiet, secretive, like he knew things the rest of us couldn't. His eyes lingered when I spoke, and I felt unspooled under them. He had this quality, intensity cloaked in calm. He asked about my life, about why I'd left school, and when I hesitated, he didn't push. He just waited, listened. That's what pulled me in, the feeling of being seen without judgment. We spiraled together fast, too fast, and within 2 weeks, I was spending more nights at his place than at Maya's. His apartment in Buckman was a third-floor corner unit, the kind of building with groaning wood and peeling paint. It smelled faintly of old dust and something sweet, like burnt incense. Instead of feeling shabby, it felt curated, intentional, as if every flaw was part of a larger design. At first, it was perfect. But Elias had routines. Every Sunday he visited a small shop on Hawthorne, the Wild Thistle, crowded with herbs, jars of powder, and shelves of books with titles like The Red Current and Transference of Will. He brought home candles that smoked black when they burned, stones that hummed faintly when pressed into my palm. He never explained them, and I never asked. I laughed it off as Portland weirdness. But slowly, things shifted. He didn't like mirrors. I draped scarves over mine until I forgot what the room looked like with glass uncovered. He said they reflected too much energy. I accepted it. He hated loud music, so I stopped playing mine. He whispered to the candles before bed, and the smell of sage became so constant that my clothes absorbed it. Each change felt small, insignificant, but small things reshape you like water on stone, drip by drip, until one day you notice you've been carved hollow. The first time he asked me to dye my hair black, I laughed. He didn't. "You'd look more aligned," he said. I wanted to please him, so I did it. Then came the clothes. Heavy, layered, dark. Then the jewelry, rings he slipped onto my fingers, necklaces he clasped behind my neck after pressing the stones to my chest, his fingers lingering as though he were listening to my heartbeat. Piece by piece, I bent. My world grew smaller. My friends stopped calling after I ignored them enough times. Maya was the only one who still checked in, and soon, Elias was the only voice I heard, the only presence I let in. It wasn't until I caught myself in a bathroom mirror at a cafe, one I hadn't covered, that I realized I didn't recognize the girl staring back. My hair black, my eyes rimmed in shadows, my mouth slack and quiet. When I spoke, ordering tea, my voice was slower, softer, like someone had put their hand inside my throat and turned the dial down. Maya noticed. "You good?" she asked one night over coffee. "You look like you haven't slept in weeks. Your vibe's off." I told her I was fine, But when she reached across the table to squeeze my hand, my skin recoiled like she'd touched a wound. It all broke open one rainy Tuesday. Maya showed up at Elias's apartment uninvited. She said I hadn't answered her texts for weeks, that she was worried I'd disappeared. Elias wasn't home, so I let her in. "You want coffee?" I asked automatically. Her face twisted. "Since when do you drink coffee? You hate hot drinks." I blinked. She was right. But the kettle was already on the stove whistling faintly, like my body had moved without consulting me. She excused herself to use the bathroom. 10 minutes passed. When she came back, her face was white, her lips trembling. "Anna," she whispered. "What's in that back room? The one with the red curtain?" My chest tightened. "That room's private." Her eyes widened. "I saw it. There's a pentagram painted on the floor, candles, a bowl full of teeth, and something else like an altar." I shook my head violently. "You weren't supposed to go in there." "He told me never." Her voice cracked. "You've never been inside, have you?" Before I could answer, the front door opened. Elias stepped inside, soaked with rain. He didn't look surprised to see her. He looked like he had been waiting. "You weren't invited," he said quietly, his voice almost tender. Maya squared her shoulders. "You've been doing something to her. She's not herself." His lips curved faintly. "She's more herself than she's ever been." Then his gaze locked onto me, and the weight of it was unbearable. His eyes seemed deeper than human eyes should be. "Don't listen to her, Anna. She wants to pull you away. She wants to break the circle." The air shifted. A glass on the counter rattled and tipped over, spilling water across the wood. The curtains stirred, though no window was open. My chest seared as if fire had been poured inside, spreading outward in icy flames. My skull felt compressed, like iron bands tightening. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. Maya yanked me by the arm. We ran for the door. The knob wouldn't turn no matter how hard we twisted. Elias stood in the hallway, his arms outstretched, his eyes now bottomless black. The overhead light flickered violently, bulbs bursting one by one. The pressure in my skull became unbearable. Thoughts scattered like torn paper. I stumbled, gasping as my chest burned hotter, sharper, like claws raking against the inside of my ribcage, trying to tear free. Maya screamed, grabbed a candle from the table, and hurled it. It exploded against the wall. Elias didn't even flinch. "Get to the circle room," she shouted. We bolted inside, slamming the door, dragging a heavy bookshelf in front of it. The knob rattled instantly, violently, as if something far stronger than him pounded against it. I collapsed in the circle, clutching my chest. The burning had spread up my throat, choking me, stretching me thin, as though my soul itself was being pried apart. Threads tugged toward the symbols on the floor. My vision blurred, spots of white flashing at the edges. From the hallway came his voice, layered, distorted, not entirely human. "Let me finish the transfer. She belongs to me now." The walls shuddered. Books fell from the shelves. The smell of burnt sage and iron filled the air. My body convulsed, a scream tearing from me that didn't sound like mine. Maya knelt beside me, gripping my face. "Anna, he's using this room to anchor something in you. We have to break the circle." Through the agony, through the fog, I remembered his words. Never disturb the circle, never step inside, never touch it. Exactly. That was the key. I tore a strip from my sleeve, dragged it across the red paint, smearing the perfect line. The air snapped. Every candle died at once. The burning in my chest extinguished instantly, leaving behind a hollow ache. And then the scream came. It wasn't Elias. It wasn't human. It was vast, tearing through the walls, rattling the very bones of the building. The floorboards shook, plaster cracked from the ceiling, and for a moment it felt like the entire apartment might collapse around us. And then, silence. When we opened the door, Elias was gone. The apartment stood empty, humming with a dead stillness. We didn't sleep that night. Maya drove me to a church in the morning where a priest listened without shock, only weary recognition. He asked me if I felt whole again. I told him I didn't know what whole felt like anymore. When I returned days later to collect my things, the apartment was spotless. Fresh paint, clean wood floors, no circle, no candles, no trace. The landlord swore the unit had been vacant for months before I moved in. It's been 2 years. I'm back in Eugene. I don't keep candles in my house. I avoid mirrors after dark. And yet sometimes, at night, I feel that same burning flicker in my chest, quick and sharp, like a spark testing dry tinder. I've caught myself turning quickly, certain someone was standing behind me. Once, I swore I saw a shadow glide across the covered mirror in my bedroom, though nothing else moved. And last week, while folding laundry, I reached into the pocket of a jacket I hadn't worn since Portland. There was a small black stone inside, smooth, cold, heavy. I know it wasn't there before. Now I leave it on my nightstand. And every morning when I wake, I check to see if it's still there. Because one morning I think it won't be. And I think that will mean he's back. I never thought I'd see her again. And before you mistake that for nostalgia, let me be clear. I don't mean it the way people sigh when they remember an old lover. I don't mean it the way poets talk about ghosts of the heart. I mean it literally. For 3 years she had been gone, erased from every corner of the world I knew. Her name was Malene Quinn, and once upon a time, she had been the most magnetic, destructive force in my life. I should have left her buried in the past. But the past doesn't stay buried, not when it wants you. We'd met in a Henderson dive bar, the kind of place where the jukebox broke every other night and the bartender barely looked up. She was 25 maybe, and she sat down beside me like we'd been waiting for each other. Quirky, intense, magnetic. That's what everyone says about people like her until they realize magnetic things burn too. She snapped pictures of us with a disposable camera, grainy flashes against sticky neon whispering, "I want to capture us forever." For 5 months it was fever. Then it soured. She needed proof of love like other people need food. "Do you still love me?" She'd text a dozen times in an hour. At dinner, she'd cry if I didn't answer fast enough, her voice trembling. "Are you sure I'm enough?" Her eyes would fill with tears that never stopped at her lashes, spilling into her plate onto the table, making everything around her feel damp with desperation. When I finally ended it, I thought I was being kind, careful, as if there's a way to slice someone open without leaving scars. Her last message still eats at me. "Take care, honey, let's meet in 3 years, I'll be better then." Then she vanished. Number gone. Apartment empty. Socials wiped, like smoke in the Vegas wind. 3 years passed. I got older, calmer, more ordinary. 30 now. A job downtown, steady hours, corporate paychecks. A woman named Erin who grounded me like no one else had. She was a nurse at Sunrise Hospital, patient in ways I didn't deserve. We made plans. A move to Summerlin, maybe a dog, maybe more. Life was good, or at least it pretended to be. But some nights, the dry ones when the desert felt hollowed out and too quiet, I'd catch myself staring at the bathroom mirror too long. My reflection would shift in subtle, awful ways. Not wrong enough to scream, but wrong enough to know. My jaw looking slimmer than it should, my nose sharper, my eyes wider. For one breath, I wouldn't see myself at all. I'd see her, Malene, smiling faintly, as if she'd been waiting. I told myself it was stress, lack of sleep, shadows, but the unease grew like rot. And then, one late September Thursday, came the knock. Not the doorbell, not hurried banging. A deliberate knock, slow, rhythmic, patient. I opened the door and my mind broke. Malene, but her face, God. Her skin was stretched too tight, shiny like plastic under the porch light. The texture was wrong, not flesh but something waxy, chemical. Her jaw had collapsed inward, reshaped by hands that didn't know where bone should stop. When she spoke, her jaw popped, cracked, ground against itself, a sound so unnatural it hollowed my stomach. Her nose was sharp enough to cut, her lips swollen and peeling, stretched across teeth that didn't fit. Her eyes, once hazel soft, were now unnaturally wide, forced open, the lids pulled so tight they looked stapled. But I knew her, because of the tattoo on her throat. "You have to love me." The one she'd gotten drunk, whispering, "Now you'll never forget." She didn't blink. Then she lunged. Her hands slammed against my throat. Cold. Not human cold, but like dead porcelain pulled from a freezer. The pressure wasn't just pain. It was wrong, like plastic fingers squeezing flesh. I couldn't breathe. Her breath smelled of antiseptic and rot, hospital chemicals mixed with something rotten beneath. She shrieked, words slurred through broken anatomy. "How do you like my face now? Do you love me yet?" I shoved her off, slammed the door. My heart pounded against my ribs like it wanted out. She pounded next. Fists, relentless. I called the police. My voice shook so bad they asked me twice to repeat the address. When the cops arrived, they looked uneasy. Las Vegas cops, the ones who'd seen everything, suddenly rattled. She was still outside, whispering to herself, too soft to hear but steady, like reciting scripture. Later, Detective Harlan called. He told me she'd had over 100 unlicensed surgeries. Border towns, Mexico, cash only. Not just cosmetic, illegal, experimental, bone shavings, jaw dislocations, cartilage extensions, eye widenings. One surgeon claimed she brought him pictures of celebrities, mannequins, anime girls, Barbie dolls. She begged, "Make me perfect." And when they asked why, she said, "He didn't love me. If I'm perfect, he will." That should have been the end, but it wasn't. 3 nights later, a note appeared on my porch, folded neatly, no envelope. "Please come to my place one last time, then I'll leave you forever. 1451 Wesley Avenue, Unit B." I told myself not to go. I told myself it was a trap, but guilt is a leash, and curiosity tightens it. The duplex sagged behind an abandoned laundromat, paint peeling, windows blind. The door was ajar. The smell hit me first, something chemical, sharp, mixed with mildew and decay. Inside, under a single buzzing bulb, a figure stood. A doll, life-sized, blonde wig, plastic skin painted with real makeup, lashes stitched in with black thread, fingernails glued on, chipped at the edges. Its face shined too wetly, like it wasn't just paint. The eyes, glass eyes, glossed over as if someone had spit polished them. Then she appeared. Meline. Her lips cracked and bleeding, her eyes glittering with something fevered. One hand clutching the doll's plastic fingers, the other holding a knife. "It's not the looks, right? It's the heart, right?" she whispered, then screamed, "Love me now, or I'll put your heart inside her." She lunged. The knife sliced my arm, hot sting, wet warmth. She pressed close, and her skin brushed mine. It felt wrong. Too smooth, too hard, slick in some places, brittle in others. Not human. Her voice gurgled, jaw clicking with each syllable. I ran, through the yard, into the street. A neighbor shouted, dialing 911. Inside her home, the police later found 6 dolls, each styled differently, each with names scrawled on tags: Perfect Meline, Love version 3, Angel Girl, and journals, pages in red ink, line after line. "He'll love me if I become everything." One note taped to the wall: "If I can't have his love, I'll build a body that will." They committed her. Words like delusional disorder and obsessive love don't mean much when you've seen what I saw. I moved, left Vegas behind, tried to live. Erin tried to anchor me, but I drifted. The dolls haunted my sleep. Her face appeared in mirrors, stretched and wide, smiling at me when I blinked. Then came the worst part. I started waking to find disposable camera photos on my nightstand. Photos of me, grainy, blurred, my throat, my hands, my face half turned in sleep. Sometimes the photos were warped, faces too wide, eyes too sharp, skin too smooth. Once the photo showed me smiling in my sleep, but I swear, I wasn't. And last night, the newest photo waits on my nightstand. I can't stop staring at it. It isn't me, it's her, Maylene, but not as a woman, as a doll. Plastic skin, glass eyes, lips painted too wide. And in the reflection behind her, half shrouded in shadow, I'm standing there, smiling, holding her hand. I knew something was wrong the moment she said my name. Not because she said it with any sharpness or cruelty, but because of the way it rolled out of her mouth, like she'd been waiting years for me to hear it. Kyle, she whispered once, across the low roar of the ember's grill, and I swear I felt it slip under my skin like a thread pulling tight. Only my name isn't Kyle, it's Anna. But in that instant, staring at her across the sticky counter and the humming beer taps and the tinny country song crackling through half-broken speakers, I didn't correct her. I couldn't. Something in the way her eyes found me, steady, unblinking, unshakable, made me feel as though I had already failed some test I hadn't known I was taking. I had seen her before. Of course I had. Kara Whitmore. She wasn't someone you could forget, even if you wanted to. Back in high school, she was the kind of girl who carried the whole hallway with her. People slowed their steps when she walked past, not because they had to, but because her presence bent the space. Everyone talked about her, even teachers, as though she wasn't just another student, but some brief, sharp miracle passing through Cedar Hill. And me? I wasn't even background noise. I was the kind of girl who sat in corners, sleeves pulled down over bitten nails, who scribbled in notebooks until the paper thinned. I never once spoke to her, not in 4 years. But I watched, not in the way people assume when you admit that. Not with hunger, not with envy. It was quieter, more secretive, like watching a storm from your window, not because you wanted to be inside it, but because you couldn't look away from the way it split the sky. Time blurred after graduation. Cedar Hill shrank smaller every year, like it was folding in on itself. Most people left if they could. I didn't. My mother got sick my second year out, and then my father got quieter, and then I got stuck. I worked at the grill. I took night shifts so I could avoid the constant stream of familiar faces, and I told myself invisibility was safer than anything else. Safer than trying. Safer than failing. And then Kara said my name. Kyle, she said again that night, tilting her head slightly, like she was savoring the shape of it. You used to sit behind me in history, right? I nodded, pulse hammering hard enough to choke me. My voice failed me, as it always did when it mattered. She smiled, easy, genuine, and for a second, I let myself believe she really remembered me. But before I could speak, someone slid into the booth beside her. Ryan Wells, football captain, homecoming king, the kind of boy who never once looked my way except to smirk with his friends. He leaned in, brushing her arm with his, and she leaned back, comfortable, familiar. Something in me folded small, like a paper bird crushed in a fist. I took their order and walked away. But I didn't stop watching. The first weeks were nothing. She came in sometimes with Ryan, sometimes with friends. She laughed too loudly, tipped well, and every time her eyes caught mine, heat flooded my throat. And then one night, she came alone. I don't remember how the conversation began, only that suddenly I was talking to her, really talking. She asked about me, about the sketchbook she swore she had seen on my desk once in high school. She told me she never made it to art school in Chicago, that her mom had gotten sick, that she stayed, that she worked now at her uncle's framing shop off Miller Street. When she laughed at something dumb I said about our teachers, I felt something inside me tear open like a wound, but not painful. A sound I had forgotten my own voice could carry. Warmth. That night, when I went home, I shut myself in my room and let out a sound that was half laughter, half scream, muffled into my pillow so no one would hear. It didn't feel real. And then came the night she asked me over. "You off soon?" she asked, leaning across the counter, her sweatshirt sleeve slipping up her arm. Yeah. Why? You should come by. I want to show you something." Her address was out by the river road near the woods, the kind of place where streetlights thinned and the air smelled like damp earth and rusted water. I told myself I was imagining the weight in her tone, that it was only the wine she promised, only friendship, maybe more, if the night bent right. But when I climbed her porch steps, heart rattling in my ribs, I noticed the first thing. Plastic. The entire living room floor was covered in clear plastic sheeting, stretched taut over the hardwood like skin. She caught me staring and laughed. "Ignore that. I'm repainting tomorrow." But I didn't ignore it. My shoes squeaked faintly as I stepped forward, the sound too sharp, too temporary, like walking inside a crime scene that hadn't yet been found. Then I saw the walls, paintings, dozens of them. Faces, always men, not portraits, but twisted, straining visages of suffering. One man's eyes bulged as blood poured from his mouth. Another hung from ropes, limbs stiff, jaw cracked open mid-scream. Another canvas showed a man mid-fall, knives blooming from his back like flowers, every wound painted with obsessive precision. And then I froze, because one of the faces staring back at me was Ryan Wells. "What the hell is this?" I whispered before I could stop myself. Kara stepped closer. Her nearness carried the faint iron tang of her sweatshirt. Like rust. Like blood that had been washed but never gone. "Entropy," she murmured. "My best so far. You can feel it, can't you? The breaking? The moment where everything finally collapses?" My throat tightened. You're joking." Her head tilted, her pupils wide, trembling. He wouldn't stop talking about his perfect life. His job. His car. So I shattered his jaw. Took hours to get the right sound, but when he screamed, I stumbled back. My calves hit the edge of a plastic-covered chair. The room seemed to tilt. The buzzing light overhead grew louder, oppressive. The paintings leaned closer. "Art is pain," she said calmly, too calmly. "Not metaphor, truth. People only show who they are when they're dying. Don't you want to see yourself?" She disappeared into the kitchen. My body locked. I couldn't move. When she returned, she carried something heavy. A mace, spiked metal, dull, solid, an artifact out of place in the dim yellow light. "It's your turn," she said sweetly, almost apologetically. "I've been planning your portrait for days." I ran. The mace slammed into the doorframe, splinters cutting my cheek as I ripped the door open and flung myself into the night. The porch plastic slicked under my shoes. I slipped, fell, rolled. Her laughter broke behind me. "Come back, I haven't finished your portrait." I don't know how I reached the main road. I only remember the trees blurring, the dark pressing close, the sound of my own heart trying to claw out of my chest. When the police raided her house, they found them. The freezer in the garage, the blood in the bathroom drains. 4 bodies, one of them Ryan Wells. The paintings matched each corpse. Kara was sentenced to life without parole. But none of that feels real. What feels real is the moment she looked at me and called me by the wrong name. The way she said Kyle, like she knew something I didn't. Sometimes I wonder if she was painting me long before that night. If maybe, in some frame I haven't seen yet, I'm already hanging, already screaming. And sometimes, late, when the house is quiet, I swear I can hear her voice in the corner of the room. "Don't look away, Kyle. You're next." I knew something was wrong the night my phone lit up with a number I'd already buried. Not just blocked, buried, deleted, erased, scrubbed from every contact I had. and yet her name still burned in the glow. Kara. My name is Elena Hart, and I used to believe in clean breaks. Goodbyes wrapped in careful words, a handshake or a hug in some brightly lit diner, and then life would roll on, neat and whole. That's how I thought it worked when I left Kara in June 2023. I thought I could fold her neatly into the past and walk away. I was wrong. At first, the texts felt harmless. Miss you, you'll come back, you just need time. I ignored them, but her love was never gentle. It had always been need disguised as devotion. If I didn't reply in 10 minutes, my phone would swell with her words. Are you ignoring me? Who are you with? Say something. Boundaries were knives to her. Every time I asked for space, she bled tears. Once she whispered against my neck, I don't need air when you're my air. At the time, I let it slide as poetry. Now, I know it was a warning. I blocked her, scrubbed her away, and for a week my life returned to its boring rhythm. Work at the small design firm in Dayton. Leftover pasta microwaved until the edges curled. A couch that sloped a little to one side. Freedom tasted like quiet. But silence is not always freedom. Silence can be weight. It started small. I'd come home and the hall light would be on. I'd swear I'd turned it off. A cabinet door slightly ajar. My throw blanket folded wrong. Not the way I left it. At first, I told myself I was distracted, tired, careless. But each time it happened, the air in the house pressed harder against me, as though the walls were leaning in. The first real break came on August 2nd. I stepped into the hallway, heard a crunch, and looked down to see glass sparkling like ice under my shoe. My front window shattered, not cracked, not chipped, smashed inward like something had been hurled through it. I froze. My whole body screamed to run. But there's a worse kind of fear than running. It's the fear that makes you search. Bat clutched in my hand, I checked every room, every closet, whispering, it's nothing, just kids, just a mistake. But nothing was touched. No valuables stolen. No drawers rifled through, just the glass. The police came, wrote their report, told me to get cameras. I laughed it off like I wasn't trembling inside. Just kids, just bad luck. Except a week later, all 4 of my tires were slashed. This time, there was no pretending. I thought of Kara. I thought of her waiting in the shadows with a knife, grinning as she carved my life apart. I texted her, I know what you did. Stay away from me. No reply. That silence pressed in harder, like a hand clamped over my mouth. By mid-August, I'd bought cameras, motion lights, a deadbolt so heavy it could have belonged to a bunker. But hardware doesn't help when the air itself feels wrong. Nights grew heavy, muffled, as though the world was padded with invisible hands. The silence in the house didn't sound like absence. It sounded like breathing. I'd sit in bed listening, certain I could hear it. Slow, quiet, waiting. And then came August 17th. I woke at 3:18 a.m. to the sound of shattering glass. I ran barefoot to the kitchen, flicked the light, and froze. The back window above the sink had exploded inward, curtains fluttering in the cold night breeze. This time I bolted outside, scanning the yard. Shadows seemed to shift as my breath smoked in the air. I swear I heard it then, the faintest trace of her laugh. Not loud, not near, just carried in the hush, as if the air itself had memory. The police came, 2 officers, Wilkins and Mendez. They swept through the house with flashlights. My voice shook when I begged them to check everything, every corner. And then Mendez pointed to the basement door. What's down there? My chest tightened. Just storage, I whispered. But they went anyway. Lights bobbing down the steps, the silence yawning open. I hovered at the top until they called me. When I stepped down, my legs felt hollow, and there she was. Kara, sitting on a bucket in the far corner, her face pale, mascara smeared down her cheeks, hair in a tangled knot. She didn't move when the flashlight found her. Didn't blink. Just stared. When Wilkins cuffed her, she didn't resist. It was only when I raised my own flashlight, hand shaking, that the real horror opened up. Behind her, tucked neatly against the wall, was what at first looked like just clutter. But the light caught it. The folds of a blanket, faded pink with little cartoon clouds, creased and dirty from use. Next to it, an apple browned to softness, a half-empty water bottle, a spiral notebook with its corner chewed, a nest. I stepped closer, swallowing hard. The blanket still held the shape of a body, indents where her head had rested, a hollow where her knees curled. I imagined her lying there, pressed against the cement, breathing with the slow confidence of someone who believed she belonged. I saw a comb, a pair of socks rolled tight, an empty bottle of perfume, the same perfume she used to wear when she pressed herself against me, sweet and cloying like lilies wilting in heat. My throat closed. The smell was still faint in the air. And then my light caught something else, half hidden beneath the blanket's edge. A small tool. Flat, sharp, metal. At first I thought box cutter, but it was longer, like a narrow chisel. My breath snagged in my chest. Wilkins noticed it too. He bent, glanced once at Kara, then back at me. He didn't pick it up. He just pressed his lips thin, and when he straightened, his eyes locked on mine. "You're lucky you called us when you did." The weight in his voice made me colder than the glass-strewn air upstairs. She went to court, probation, therapy. Her mother sobbed. I moved, cut ties, scrubbed myself clean. But wounds don't heal in silence. They throb. Now it's been a year. New house, new number, new life. Yet paranoia walks with me like a shadow. Some nights the motion light flicks on. Some mornings, I wake to a door left ajar, though I swear I locked it. A mug turned the wrong way in the cupboard. Small things, easy to dismiss, if I wanted to. But I hear her sometimes. The laugh, soft, far away, braided into the hum of the refrigerator, or the rattle of pipes at night. Sometimes it's a shuffle too, like fabric brushing against the floorboards, quiet, testing. And sometimes worse, I smell it. That perfume. Sweet lilies, faint but sharp, lingering just long enough to turn my stomach. I tell myself, it's imagination, trauma echoing. But then I remember the apple in the basement, the blanket, the tool. She hadn't just come to scare me. She had been living there, planning, waiting. And when I close my eyes, I can't shake the thought. If she had a key once, what's to stop her now? Because sometimes silence doesn't mean they've gone. Sometimes it means they're already inside. Silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it feels like the world is holding its breath, waiting for something to happen, and you're the only one who can hear it. That was my first thought when I stepped out of the car in the mountains of Northern California. The cold biting at my skin, the air sharper than I expected. I wasn't surprised it was quiet. I was surprised by the way the quiet moved. It pressed in, thick and heavy, as if the air itself was aware of me. The kind of silence that doesn't just surround you. It listens. I remember shivering and rubbing my arms, though I hadn't admitted to myself yet that it was more than the cold. This trip wasn't supposed to feel ominous. It was supposed to be a reset button, a chance to breathe again. A romantic getaway at 2800 Whispering Pines Lane. The address sounded sweet when Ben first said it, like something out of a postcard. But postcards never tell the whole story. Ben had planned the entire trip, his way of patching us back together. He called it a chance to reconnect. I knew what that meant. He was trying to save us. Or maybe save himself from me. We'd been together a little over a year, long enough for the glow to fade and the shadows to show. At first he told me I was magnetic, fiery, impossible to look away from. Later, when the laughter thinned out and the fights took their place, the words shifted. Unpredictable, intense, difficult to manage. Those words stuck. Like burrs in the skin, they pricked at me when I least expected, and I hated how much they hurt because deep down, some part of me feared he was right. So I agreed to the trip, agreed to the drive up winding roads lined with endless pine, agreed to pretend that the cold distance between us wasn't widening every day, and agreed, though I wouldn't have said it out loud, to try being the version of myself he wanted. Soft, sweet, uncomplicated. But the silence in the mountains didn't make that easier. It made me feel like the trees themselves would notice if I cracked. The cabin was smaller than I imagined, though cozy in that staged way rentals often are. A tidy little kitchen with copper pans on the wall, a fireplace stacked neatly with wood, a loft bedroom tucked beneath sloped rafters with white linens pulled tight. It would have been perfect, if not for the door at the end of the hall. It was locked from the outside. When Ben asked about it, the host had supposedly told him it was just storage. He brushed it off with a laugh, but my eyes kept going back to the brass knob, catching the faintest sliver of light unyielding. That was the first thing that made me uneasy. Not the silence, not the way the trees seemed to crowd closer after dark, but that door. I hated it. The first night, snow began to fall. Slow at first, soft as a lullaby. Then harder, thicker, until the flakes slapped against the windows like tiny hands. It didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the sky wanted to bury us. Ben sat by the fire, scrolling through his phone, pretending not to notice my screen lighting up over and over. My thumb trembled as I typed, but the messages didn't make sense when I reread them. Fragments, words I didn't remember choosing. "Who's that?" His tone was casual, but I saw the flicker in his eyes. "Just work." I smiled too wide. "Relax." He nodded, but the moment stretched long and brittle, invisible wires straining between us. Every unspoken word pulled tighter. Later, when I went to bed, I slipped my hand beneath the pillow and touched the knife I'd hidden there. Smooth wooden handle. Cold steel. I told myself it was for protection, against bears, against intruders, against whatever was behind that locked door. But deep down, I knew. I didn't trust him anymore. But even as I gripped the knife, I had the unsettling sense that someone else was pleased with my choice, like a hand brushing over mine in the dark, guiding it. I dreamed of footsteps pacing above the loft, even though the only thing above us was roof and rafters. I dreamed of someone whispering my name through the keyhole of the locked door at the end of the hall. The next morning, Ben found the knife. I heard the scrape of wood on floorboards, the sharp inhale of breath. When I walked in, he was standing by the bed holding the blade like it was a piece of me he'd never seen before. "Why do you have this?" His voice cracked. His face looked drained, as if I'd already confessed something awful. I opened my mouth to lie, to laugh it off, but the words that slipped out weren't mine. "Don't worry. My brother will be here soon. We're all in this together." The instant I said it, my stomach dropped. My skin went cold. My brother. I don't have a brother. Ben's eyes widened, panic flickering across his face. He backed away, shaking his head like he was seeing something I couldn't. I tried to explain, tried to laugh, to say it was a joke, but the words wouldn't come. It was as if something else had spoken through me and I was only left with the echo. That day stretched into a haze. Time didn't move the way it should. I kept catching glimpses of shadows that didn't belong, broad shoulders in the corner of my eye, a hand resting on the edge of the couch that disappeared when I blinked. When I washed my face in the bathroom, I looked up and saw him, not fully, but layered over my reflection. My mouth, but his grin. My eyes, but harder, older. I gasped and stumbled back, but when I looked again, it was only me. And the whole time, the cabin seemed colder in one spot, in front of that locked door, as though the air itself recoiled, unwilling to warm. That night the knocking started. Not random, not wind or branches. A rhythm. 3 short, 2 long. A pause. Then again. I pressed my ear to the door once, trembling. I could have sworn I heard breathing on the other side. Ben grew restless. He kept pacing, muttering to himself, avoiding my gaze. "I don't like this place," he said. "Something's wrong with you here." He was right. Something was wrong. But not just with me. With him. With us. With the silence that pressed in on every word. The snowstorm worsened, pounding against the glass, sealing us in. I thought we were trapped together, but in truth we were never alone. The third night, Ben tried to leave. I woke to the sound of the door slamming against the wind. I ran to the window and saw him stumbling barefoot through the snow, gasping as the ice cut his skin. His breath was ragged, visible in frantic bursts. I could have stopped him. Maybe I should have. But I didn't move. I stood at the window watching his figure disappear into the dark until the storm swallowed him whole. And then, red and blue lights flickering through the trees, voices shouting, boots crunching on snow. The cabin door burst open, blinding beams cutting through the dark. But when I turned, there was nothing. No Ben, no police, just silence, heavier than before. The days after that unraveled, or maybe they weren't days at all. Time bent, folded. Sometimes I woke in the loft, sometimes on the floor. Sometimes I heard voices upstairs, though the loft was empty. Sometimes I found things in my pocket, a brass key with teeth too sharp, a scrap of paper with handwriting I didn't recognize. And sometimes, worst of all, I woke to find carvings etched into the wood. Faces. His face. My brother's face. Jawline sharp, eyes gouged deep into the pine. I never remembered making them, but the knife on the floor was always sticky with splinters. I can't tell when the change truly happened, when I stopped being just Chloe and started being something else. The Airbnb listing appeared on my phone one night. I don't remember searching for it. A perfect stay. We loved the isolation. Chloe and her brother were the most wonderful hosts. The username was mine. The profile picture was mine. But I didn't write it. Now, the cabin breathes with me. The silence isn't silence at all. It's listening, waiting. Sometimes I hear a woman's laugh in the snow outside. Sometimes footsteps on the stairs. Sometimes a man's low voice murmuring in my own cadence. When I catch my reflection in the frosted window, I see him beside me. Not fully, just a shadow, just a grin, but close enough to know he's here, and he's patient. I don't know if Ben ever made it out. I don't know if I'm still inside this cabin, or if the cabin is inside me. But I do know one thing: someone new will book it. Someone new will step out of their car into this heavy silence, and when they do, we'll be waiting.